Many of you probably already know, but there was a crossover movie of Scooby-Doo and Courage the Cowardly Dog that came out recently. I'm making this video because there's some information revealed there that really recontextualizes some things. Just a quick warning, I'm going to spoil the ending of the movie, so if you don't want to know the answer of the mystery, I suggest you watch the movie first. Now, anyone who's ever watched Courage the Cowardly Dog probably noticed at one point that the town of nowhere, especially the Bag's farmhouse, seemed to always attract supernatural phenomenons to the point where you can't help but wonder if the place is haunted. Well, according to this movie, it's kind of the case. Apparently, the farmhouse is located above an impact crater, an area that suffered a hit from the same meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs millions of years ago, and deep within the ground, there is dark matter meteor buried inside that seemed to be the root of the supernatural events in the series. This is a pretty big deal because it does actually make me reconsider certain things, although for the most part, it actually just makes me question more things. So for one, given how Katz and LeQuack only found out about the whereabouts of the meteor after they became mayor, this would mean that there are government entities that are completely aware of the existence of the dark matter, but they don't really do anything. Katz not only explained that it had unlimited power, which to be fair might be hyperbole, but he also said that it can control cicadas and even manipulate humans into giving their money. It's really hard to believe that Katz and LeQuack were the only ones who thought about using the meteor for their own gain. Something like this could have been a great asset, so why is it that the government never confiscated it and used it for their own benefit? Well, honestly, the only explanation I can think of is that perhaps politics had something to do with it. Assuming that multiple government entities, including international ones, are somewhat aware of the existence of this meteor, then it's possible there may have been some kind of power struggle that prevented them from freely using it without potentially rising the tension between other parties. It might also explain why the farmhouse generally doesn't seem to be very populated. Something that's made apparent throughout the movie is that the town of nowhere seemed to have invested a lot in the field of tourism. They strongly advertised the eerie aspects of the town to appeal visitors. Even when you visit the mayor's mansion, there are a ton of posters and statues of iconic villains from the series. So with this, it's definitely strange that the Bag's farmhouse never ended up transforming into a tourist trap, even though realistically, people should know that a lot of the crazy shit that happens in this town seemed to happen in the farmhouse. There was even a television broadcast that showed recordings of the events of the series, some of them taking place in the farmhouse, which were meant to advertise the town. So because of that, if we are to assume that the state intentionally isolates the place from both the public and from any type of exploration, whether it's commercial or for other nefarious reasons, then I think it's safe to assume that it's likely a diplomatic decision. Although in the case of Katz and LeQuack, they were not as concerned with that since they wanted all the power to themselves, since they are criminals, which is why they had no qualms with just abusing the meteor. Of course, this is just my theory. In all honesty, none of this probably even matters since it's debatable if this movie is even canon. I mean, it's a fucking Scooby-Doo crossover. Funnily enough, this actually isn't the first time the series has attributed some kind of reason for why the farmhouse seemed to be haunted. It's just that the other times they were more so referring to specific events, not necessarily encompassing all of the supernatural events that have ever occurred. In case you don't remember, the farmhouse was actually built in a land that used to be a cemetery, and as if that wasn't bad enough, it's also haunted by this group of zombies that appear whenever the windmill stops spinning. Now, the funny thing about these two things is that they actually contradict each other. Let me explain why. The first ever owner of this land was a farmer called Giles Galette, who built the windmill 250 years ago. This is an important detail because there's the serial killer called Aaron von Volkheim who was buried in the same cemetery the house was built over. Now, assuming Giles Galette was also the first owner of the farmhouse, then Volkheim could have only died before Galette owned the land, but that doesn't really make any sense because one of the things Volkheim and his partner Tarantella used to do was pose as filmmakers, and the film industry only started to be a thing in the late 19th century, and assuming Courage takes place in the 21st century, then Volkheim shouldn't even be older than 100 years. The only explanation I can think of is that perhaps Galette never actually built the farmhouse we see today. We don't actually see the house in any of the flashback photos, so in all likelihood, Galette probably built a different house, and then at one point after he died, the rights to the land got transferred to a cemetery agency, and then later in the future, the Bag family took ownership of the territory, and throughout the years, the windmill remained intact. Not that anyone would want to remove it anyway, I mean, it's renewable energy for God's sake. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about Courage. Watching this crossover movie made me revisit memories of the series, so I felt like writing a video sharing my thoughts on some things. While you're at it, you should watch my character analysis of Kage Otsutsuki. I think it's a pretty fun and enlightening video that you might enjoy. In the meantime, hope you all have a nice day.